Somewhere in Bolivia, at 4,000 meters above sea level, there is a field of broken stone. And if you look at it from a distance, you might think, rubble, something collapsed, something fell. But get closer, because the rubble fits together, joints cut to less than 1/10 of a millimeter, surfaces machined flat across several meters, angles replicated identically, block to block, as if produced from a single template. This is Puma Punku, and it is, by any honest measure, the most technically inexplicable construction site on Earth. Not because of what it is, because of when. The stone here comes from two sources: red sandstone, quarried 10 kilometers away, and andesite. The largest andesite block on site weighs 130 tons, the largest red sandstone block closer to 800. They were moved, transported, placed precisely, at 4,000 meters altitude, in a region with no trees large enough to use as rollers, without the wheel. And then machined, not shaped, not chiseled, machined. Flat surfaces accurate to fractions of a millimeter, interior corners, inside recesses cut into the stone, so geometrically perfect they appear to have been made with a router. This predates the router by 3,000 years, possibly much more. The conventional date for Puma Punku is around 500 AD, attributed to the Tiwanaku, a sophisticated pre-Inca culture that dominated the Andean Altiplano for over 1,000 years. And the Tiwanaku were remarkable. Extensive trade networks, complex agriculture, a civilization that left real evidence and real construction across the region. But here's the problem. We have the Tiwanaku's other buildings. We can study their methods, their tools, their technique. And none of it matches what is found at Puma Punku. Elsewhere, the Tiwanaku used rough stone and adobe, standard construction for the period, consistent with their known tools: stone hammers, bone chisels, abrasives. At Puma Punku, those tools would not have worked. Andesite is harder than the stone tools available to them. You cannot cut andesite with a copper chisel. You cannot achieve millimeter tolerances with a bone tool. In 200 years of excavation, not a single instrument has been found that could have produced what stands here. Let me show you the H-blocks. Scattered across Puma Punku are dozens of identical H-shaped stones, each one cut to the same dimensions, each one with the same 6 recesses, the same interior angles, the same interlocking geometry. Individually, they look decorative, but when researchers began fitting them together, they realized something. They're components, pieces of a larger structure, a structure that was once complete. To replicate a single H-block today, using modern CNC machinery, laser measurement, computer-controlled cutting tools, takes approximately 4 days. There are over 100 of them at Puma Punku, all identical, all made from andesite. Think about what that means. Not one craftsman working on one stone over many years. A system, a repeatable process producing the same result at the same tolerances across hundreds of separate pieces. That is not primitive technology slowly mastered. That is industrial precision. Then there are the clamps. Connecting many of the large blocks are slots, eye-shaped channels cut into the tops of adjacent stones, straddling the joints. These once held metal clamps. Most were stripped centuries ago for the metal, but traces remain. Analysis of those traces revealed something unexpected. The clamps were not cast elsewhere and then fitted. The metal was poured molten, directly into the slots, on site. The stones were joined by casting liquid metal into them. The alloy, copper, arsenic, and nickel, a specific formulation that produces a clamp harder and more durable than standard Andean bronze. Not the simplest choice, not the most obvious choice, the optimal choice. Radiocarbon dating at the broader Tiwanaku site returns dates as far back as 300 BC. Some geological analyses push activity here to 1500 BC, but underneath the visible ruins, geologists have found something unusual in the soil. evidence of a catastrophic flood. Sediment layers consistent with a massive, rapid inundation. A Bolivian scholar named Poznansky spent 4 decades mapping this site in the early 1900s. Using astronomical alignment data, he calculated a construction date for the core structures, 15,000 BC. His methodology has been disputed. His findings have not been replicated by the mainstream, but they have never been definitively disproven. And the flood sediment underneath the ruins has never been explained. Let's talk about the holes. Bored into andesite, dozens of them. Not punched, not hammered, bored. Circular in cross-section, smooth internal walls, consistent diameter throughout their depth. The kind of hole produced by a rotating bit under constant pressure. In some cases, the holes are not straight through, they curve, slightly, deliberately, and the internal surface of that curved bore through hard stone is smooth. Take a moment with that. A curved tunnel drilled through one of the hardest stones on Earth, with a smooth interior finish throughout the entire arc of the bend. There is no hand tool that does this. There is no improvised technique that produces this result. This requires a mechanism, something that rotates, something that guides, something that maintains consistent pressure around a curve. To achieve this today, you would use a flexible drill shaft and a diamond-tipped or carbide bit. The Tiwanaku had copper tools. Copper is softer than andesite. A copper drill bit pressed against andesite would wear down before it made a mark. In 2001, engineer Christopher Dunn conducted a detailed surface analysis of Puma Punku. His conclusion: the flat surfaces had been produced by a process consistent with precision linear grinding, not circular, not random, linear and controlled, the kind of finish produced by a surface grinder. His report was not published in an archaeological journal. It was published in an engineering journal, because the archaeologists he contacted told him his findings were outside the scope of what they were prepared to consider. 4 kilometers from the site, Lake Titicaca sits at 3,800 meters, and beneath its surface there are ruins, submerged field systems, walls, roads that run off the shoreline into the water. Those structures were built when the lake level was different, much lower. The Andes are still rising. The current altitude of Puma Punku is not where it started. The lake beside it was smaller. The climate was different. The site is not where it began. And we do not know when it began. Here is the problem that archaeology has never resolved. The level of precision found here does not appear anywhere else in the ancient world at the same date. Not in Egypt, not in Mesopotamia, not in any culture we would consider contemporaneous. The standard response to this is, we underestimate ancient peoples. And that is true, we do. Göbekli Tepe taught us that. Çatalhöyük taught us that. But underestimating ancient people means assuming they could do things we hadn't credited them with, given enough time, enough labor, enough ingenuity. Puma Punku asks something different. Puma Punku asks, with what tool? Because the tool is not there. It has never been there. In 200 years of excavation, not a single instrument has been recovered that could have produced this. Either the tools were removed, or they were never made of anything that could survive. Or, the question we should be asking is not what tool, but who taught them. Puma Punku was not built by a known civilization using known methods. That is not a fringe position. It is the conclusion every engineer who has studied it seriously arrives at, and the question every archaeologist who has studied it seriously avoids answering. In 2013, ground surveys revealed buried monolithic structures extending several hundred meters beyond the current excavation boundary. The excavation boundary has not moved. At 4,000 meters, in the middle of Bolivia, there is something that should not exist. And it has been sitting there, waiting, for longer than we are currently willing to admit. If you found this useful, or unsettling, there's more where this came from. Every episode goes deeper. The subscribe button is there if you want to follow where this leads. And if something here surprised you, or if you think we've got it wrong, say so below. The best conversations on this channel happen in the comments. What they buried. What we found.